Hey, what's good, everyone? Twisted here with Open Sorcery, and today I want to go ahead and talk about the topic of Hygge, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And generally speaking, that is something that has come across, my desk, been brought to my attention just through perusing the internet, what have you. And generally speaking, while it's considered as having a sort of nice, cozy lifestyle, what have you, at least from what I've already come across, but not really all too deeply. Honestly, I felt like it'd be a good opportunity to reach out to a recurring guest and good old friend of mine as well as Devi's and the channel itself, Mr. Whyking here. He's been on previous discussions and topics such as talking about the higher self or the archetype of the fool and so on. And I'll leave those in the description. Go ahead and have you listen to yourselves if you're interested. But to go ahead and talk about Hygge of itself, honestly, this will be more so like a learning moment for me and having you go ahead and more so explain it and me try to comprehend as best I can from more so of that. While the term is, at least from what I saw, of a Danish origin, more so from your perspective as an Icelander and also just from overall Scandinavian perspective. So, Whyking, in terms of Hygge, generally speaking, what comes to mind? What does it necessarily mean?
Um, First off, I'm gonna say welcome. And what it means is it's Danish exactly. It's hygge in Danish. They always sound like they have potato in their mouths. Anyway, uh, it means to have cozy, essentially in the modern day. But for Icelandic, it's derived from the word mind. So I guess you would say, as a cross Scandinavian thing, is a peace of mind. It's sitting down. You're having a bad day, maybe sitting down for 5 minutes with your coffee. Well, this is the modern example, and you decide just to rest and just for 5 minutes and not think about what is going on, and that it's a peace of mind. So it's like a meditative state. But going beyond that and having that at home or with friends and yeah, have it cozy essentially with friends. And but it also, I think, connects to how winters are in Scandinavia.
Oh yes, yes. More so of taking on the actual regional conditions and kind of more so acclimating to it's what things are as they are and more so taking that time of all right, we can't really be outside, we can't really be doing all too much, so we have to acclimate to that and go with the flow of that and being all good with things slowing down, what have you.
Yeah. In the older days in Iceland, for example, the only thing we could do is tell stories, write stories, and sing songs to pass the time in the long winter nights. And so, at least for Iceland, that's the hygge or huggulegt in Icelandic. Um,
I know I definitely would try. I would butcher those pronunciations if I try to say it myself.
sure, sure. Huggulegt means the lightness of the mind, or would be the word directly translated. But yeah, it's hygge or
Oh yes, and more so spelling out Higgelect in terms of you can pronounce it way better, of course, but
sure.
That being spelled for those who are wanting to look into that term, particularly Hugguleggt in English spelling, what have you.
Yeah.
And with that, so I guess if we're gonna go ahead and put it into more so of Americanized new agey sort of terms, that correlates with the general concept of mindfulness, right? And doing mindfulness meditations and
Definitely.
all that sort of thing. So I guess what would you say in terms of mindfulness meditations and whether you want to say it kind of fits into that aesthetic itself or even just for you personally, what would you consider as, effective mindfulness meditations that you happen to go ahead and do? That, once again, it could fit with the topic of Hygge itself, or just for you personally.
For my personally, I would say swimming. Um, just exercise gets you like into the mode, but sometimes it's like not, because you get into the routine of things and then you drop out of it. But yeah, definitely it's mindfulness. It's very in that aesthetic. It is simple. It is very sleek. I mean, it's the same uh, design process as the Nordic design, which is just sort of simple, black and white, maybe red in there, done. It just like it's very bare bones, and that's what's cool about it. And yeah, but on a personal level, swimming, I would say, is the primary like mover. Um,
Oh yes. So taking like a physical action, right, and being able to go ahead and do that physical action, and just kind of like, I guess, lost, like kind of like lost in it, like your physical body's doing these sorts of things. So, if it's like something that you're, doing on like a regular basis, or well that it's like you can go ahead and take that physical action, and then your mind kind of like is free to wander and explore, and not necessarily have to focus on that physical action, as opposed to
yes,
say something that might be a little more intensive, because it's not necessarily something that you're as that takes more so of that attention, what have you.
there's also a quality of being in the water, um, that's different. And famously, Joe Rogan advocates free floating. I think where
Oh
you
yes, yes, the
deprive,
sensory deprivation tanks.
yeah, you deprive your senses, and you go into like water and deprive all your senses, and you achieve sort of a dreamlike state, and it makes things just easier to get into that state for me. Just swimming, you don't need a sensory deprivation, or you don't need swimming. These are just methods to make it easier.
Yes,
But
two of
stereotypically,
many.
go ahead. Yeah, too many. But stereotypically, people in Hygge just, especially in winter, we just like blankets, hot beverage, and then a movie, and experience these things with other people. It's the primary. We talked about this also before. The dark side of this is that in Scandinavia, because once you find your own like people or group, you become a oftenly closed group, and people that come here or in Scandinavia, um, that don't necessarily have the network or friends, they get very isolated and depressed, um, which is not Hygge. It's not comfortable.
Oh yes. So it's generally
Uh,
just the idea of like going ahead and finding the people that you click with, you vibe with, resonate with, whatever terminology works for you. And the dark side of it's like, all right, you know what, like we're gonna be protective but overprotective, and
yeah,
not necessarily like try to preserve what already exists, but that being unhealthy, because actually this ties into something that we've discussed before, right? Impermanence, right? When
sure.
it was you and I and Devi having that conversation, once again, I can go ahead and link that in the description for those who want to listen about that topic. But pretty much like the nature that everything is continual change, and that even includes like, you know what, maybe there's someone else that can go ahead and provide a different dynamic for that friend group, but it's holding on to that particular friend group in some sort of state, or whether it's in the present or even in the past, that can go ahead and alienate others and make it to where it's not necessarily helping spur on more in beneficial growth for you and those in that friend group, and of course detrimental to the exclusion of those other folks that could be a beneficial contribution. Now obviously, being protecting your group, protecting a friend group in of itself, there's potential benefits of that if it's like, say, someone who's a bad actor, someone who is not necessarily all too good, right? Whether it's
Sure.
just out, like, if you can just detect that outright because they more so wear their intentions on their sleeve, or you can sense that there's some bad juju. But often, like, a lot of often cases, what, it's worth giving someone a shot to see what they can bring to the table and add to the particular, like, mixture and recipe and melting pot of things.
Yeah, I was I came across this because there's a lot of immigration from United States to Iceland, and I've always been open to like new people, and so I came across this problem, especially Icelandic culture and community. We're very close. We are like our networks are like social islands. This is like it's a hard word. A bunch of islands. Archipelago.
Yes, archipelago. Yes.
Thank you. And some are just very out there, and they don't really connect. And it's very hard for foreign immigrants to adjust. That too, and our archaic language that doesn't help either. But that's not a different problem. Um, but yeah, it's rough for immigrants to Scandinavia as a whole, because this is not a like Icelandic problem. It's the whole Scandinavia thing. And yeah, I'm not sure what to say more about it.
Oh yeah, like it's not necessarily all too intense and what have you, but
No, no.
I guess what I would go ahead and say is, like, so went ahead and asked, like, what's an easy way for you to more so get into that sort of mindfulness state, what have you, and all that. I guess
I see.
outside of your own personal, like, what works well for you, what can you think of that? I guess you can say is, like, just from your own top, off the top of the head thinking, would be an easy way for other people to get into a state of Hygge or into a state of comfort and mindfulness of a beneficial sort of manner.
Where to start? That's a good question.
Whatever comes to mind, man.
Well, the Icelandic way is festivals, but and
Hey,
drinking. So
hey, shit,
that
man.
comes to
Like,
mind, but
that.
it's just
Hey, if
a
it works, it works.
yeah. But we are the rowdy part of like, well, I say Norse because we're not technically Scandinavians. Um,
Oh yes, just overall, like, Norse, culture in of itself across a
yes,
variety of different countries, what have you.
we are the barbarians of the group, so that makes sense. Um, Arguably, Greenlanders are the most barbarians, but yeah, we're second to first place. Who's counting? Who's counting? But generally, I'd say stop worrying about the past and the future. Would be the correct answer.
Be
How you
present
do
in
that?
it now.
Yeah, being now. But how you do that is tougher. The first phase is that you have, well, assuming that you come from a bad place, you have to replace bad thoughts with good thoughts, and eventually the good thoughts will be reinforcing that you don't need thoughts to put forth. Then there will be silence, and that's what we call peace of mind or mindfulness
Yes.
or Hygge. That would be my advice. How you
Hey,
reach there? Um, my method was to think of bad thoughts like Russell, and instead of like tackle them on, I would just sort of rustle them and put them to the side, if that makes sense.
yes.
This is sort of emotional. This is not logical. This is an emotional tool that you can mimetic.
Oh yes. And I think that's a very good way to go ahead and sum it up and close it out right there. Just, whatever method you happen to choose, going ahead and just allow yourself to be present in now and appreciative, like, oh, this moment right here. You know what? Quite nice. What have you. In whatever means and manner you happen to go ahead and do so, and what have you. So, hey, in of itself, just keep being simple, stupid, you know? In that sort of manner. And all the other bullshit that
I
may
mean,
go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
yeah. Oh, sorry. I mean, it also not necessarily. So, for example, if you have back pain, which is very common, A hygge is maybe make do stretches for 30 minutes to make it go away.
Yes.
I mean, it does not have to be cozy and everything. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm trying to fix this. You focus on one thing, and if it makes better and it makes your mind go at peace, I think you got it.
Okay, yes. So I think that's kind of like where I think that's kind of like
Yeah.
maybe where a misconception is, at least when it comes to like a more so like Americanized sort of manner of interpretation, is kind of like coziness being with at peace, whereas you don't necessarily need to be wrapped up in a blanket or with a
No.
mug of tea or coffee, what have you, or that sort of thing. It can be while you're out and about and doing something a lot more active, what have you,
Yes.
you know, and like trying to over emulate, the sort of like conditions of like, oh yes, folks in the different Nordic regions, whether it be Iceland or the Danish area or Scandinavia or wherever else, trying to emulate those sorts of conditions and be like, this is how they did it. I gotta follow it the exact same way, and what have you.
Yeah, I think I
Like
think I think it's funny because the especially Scandinavia, well, Iceland and Greenland, so Norse, yeah, I would say Norse. That entire Norse region is sort of Europe's backwater, to be honest. And and
I've never heard that. I've never heard that before.
it's true because if you think about it, if let's go a little bit into history, lane of like Bronze Age or previous, like 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. The people that went to Germany and like France and populated the mainland, the people that went north to Denmark and Norway and Sweden and then later to Iceland and Greenland are the people that got the short end of the stick. And what I'm saying is that there's a lot of wild lands. There's a lot of manual labor to try to eke out a living. It's very harsh. The weather has always been harsh, and part of the hygge is that after you have toiled and toiled and toiled away, are in pain, that you're trying to find a peace of mind. So the component that is also part of it is the toil part. You have, well, I'm reminded by Tao Te Ching, when the work is done, rest. It's just that
Oh
in
yes.
that simple. So it's like when you have done your work, just rest, and that's Hygge at its core.
Okay.
And
Yes.
so,
So that presents another perspective of like the how, like, as you were saying, a potential dark side previously, like a manner in which it could potentially be imbalanced is like trying to do in perpetual balance, trying to have that potential comfort and mindfulness, what have you, and all that sort of thing. But you could get lost a bit too much in that in regards to like other things, not necessarily going ahead and being, properly attended to.
yes, if you're very comfortable, it's really hard to be more comfortable than you are comfortable. I mean, I don't know how you do that.
Oh yeah, so yeah, pretty much
So,
just an advisory. Go ahead and it's not a Hague in of itself is not necessarily an excuse to neglect other aspects that need addressing. It's more so of, right. You know what? Going ahead and recognizing that you don't have to be continually productive to where you go ahead and like just stress out and or like completely like I'm trying to think of a particular term right now, burnout pretty much,
yeah,
and just allow for that balance of like, all right, you know what, time for work, it's time for rest, and having that sort of recognizing of it, even if the Hake terminology or at least the Hake interpretation may be more so leaning towards that restfulness part of it all.
yeah. Um, but it also the focus on the rest part maybe shows that the culture enamored with it um, is very overworked. Because here's the thing, um, we we are not we're not thinking about it. Like um we don't use that terminology that often. It's like we maybe like notice it and say, "Hey, it's a Hygge," this is very nice, and then we
Yes.
just move on. But if you're always thinking, "I'm trying to achieve this," it maybe shows that you're too much on the work side anyway, and it's more like there's a problem somewhere else, and once you fix that, it sort of goes into balance. Yeah, just a thought.
Oh yes. And very much I agree with that line of thinking and what have you. So, do you have any, I guess, any more so last thoughts in regards to Higg that you feel like are important or worth mentioning in this sort of, I guess you can say, just general, discussion and, getting what I would say is more so of an authentic, Nordic perspective from it and all of that you are able to very much so appreciated provide and all of that.
On the spiritual side, I think a commonality is like candles and a fire, like a campfire, is probably on a cold night is peak Hygge. Across Norse. I think that is the peak. Like, if you want some commonalities between Norse Hygge, that everyone will agree. A campfire on a cold night, and yeah, I think that will work. Or candles as a substitute, like indoor substitute.
Oh
I
yes.
think that everyone would agree. There's something to it, but we won't go into that. I have thoughts on that, but we will go
Oh,
into.
well, what thoughts do you have on it? By all means.
Well, I think campfire is very primordial to us. Stories by the campfire, it's the essential. It's been with us since we began hunting. Um, well, we always hunted, but yeah, like we were by the theory, we were more like foraging trees and such. But once we started hunting fire and discovered the fire, and we started the telling stories and myths, and it's just very primordial, and that's why that Hygge feeling is. What I'm trying to say is that feeling is very primordial. Plus that it just feels real. That's what I'm saying.
Oh yeah. No, I get
Very
you. Like
real.
it's triggering that sort of primal, that sort of thing that while we live in this day and age with our modern comforts, what have you, of weather controlled homes where we can turn on the AC up or put on a heater or something like that in many cases, or just going ahead and being more so removed from nature for a lot of people, not everybody, but a good chunk of people, especially in the West, that it's more so like what, like there's still that thing within us that still exists within our bones, within our genetics and all of
Mm-hmm.
that, of times when we were cavemen, cavewomen, or even past that into say the agricultural age, and like tapping into like what, when things were more so simpler and like we had to be more so down to earth on average, what have you, as opposed to like, oh, we have these particular creature comforts that are more so conveniently and easily brought to us by way of the modern, sort of transportation systems
Sure.
and all of that, cars, buses, trains, what have you. And, pretty much like, I guess you can say it's rather antithetical to the whole idea of 15-minute smart cities that, say the UN or other, institutions are
Yeah.
more so promoting, where once again, convenience is within a walk away, you know what I mean? A short walk away or
Exactly.
a small drive away, you know? And being like,
Uh,
you know what? Oh, go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna just drive the point that I've never felt more alive than skinny dipping into the Arctic Ocean and then sit by the fire afterwards. It's
Oh,
great.
yes. Tale of two extremes.
It just I don't know how to explain it. It's just best.
Oh, yeah. It's
Some
like,
some would consider that crazy, which it is. There's so many factors. For example, I'm like more acclimated to the cold, etc., etc. Like, uh, be careful out there. I'm not recommending, but I'm still recommending. But given like you're accustomed to caveats of being out in the wilds, it's fine. Um,
oh, yes. I'm sure that Wim Hof would agree in terms
yes,
of
yes.
being in cold conditions with this manner of meditation. Like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and just in a pair of shorts go ahead and be in very extreme cold conditions,
Well,
what have
yeah,
you, for elongated
he
periods of time.
he takes it to another level. But yeah, I still not need that fire. I don't know. Whoops.
Yep.
Anyway,
We have technical difficulties, everyone.
yeah, that was my beer cans. Being foolish again.
Oh yeah, dude. Definitely not cutting that out. But so yeah, just like pretty much like yeah, he does take it to another level, but you know, it's more so along the lines of like going ahead and finding what you're uncomfortable in, and going ahead and I can allot time for this and build mental fortitude and what have you, and be like, you know what, this like knowing that you can stretch your limits, your boundaries of what you may consider as unable to do so, but there you can quite considerably without necessarily getting injured or dying, what have you. And then
Yeah,
pretty much like, you know what, after we've gone ahead and we've grown or we've done the work and all sort of thing, then returning to the Hygge, then go ahead and coming back to the restfulness, the coziness, what have you, until it's time for that next exploration, whether it's, more so of a caveman trying to find their food, or some sort of pioneer going on their voyage, or, whatever the case may be. Maybe you having a fucking, hour long commute from one side of a city to the next, whatever that may take form and shape for you, and throughout the course of your life, what have you. Or maybe going on a hiking trail, or, so on and so forth.
sometimes stress is just a matter of perspective
Oh, yes.
and your attitude towards. I mean, and often in my life, looking back, my attitude was the most stressful bit about it. That my attitude was wrong towards it. I was trying to change something that was just a big reality wall, and I was just like, no, I'm gonna change the wall. But yeah, it said no.
Oh, yes. So pretty much just like, all that sort of thing, that stress, I guess you can say that this one particular adage and phrase happens to go ahead and ring true quite a bit, in that pressure makes diamonds, right? So you start off with coal, and then you add a significant amount of pressure, whether it be over time or more so in a controlled setting, and that's how you go ahead and make diamonds, right? So if you're able to survive that, if you're able to allow for that growth, you can go ahead and get into a more evolved, a more improved form of what you were previously, and so
Sure.
on. And my bad for the dog barking in the background, at various points throughout the recording. Oh well, this with the beer can technical difficulties and that right there. We're just gonna let it be, what have you.
Sure. I
But
mean, for me, it fits. I mean, I like beer. That's about it.
yes, so that adds to your manner of Hygge right there. To your manner
Yeah.
of Hygge. Yes.
Like I just admit it, and it's just like I said, like we are the barbarians of the north, and we're proud of it. But we're also shameful about it. It's a double-edged sword. I mean, it's just like
Well, yeah, honestly, like just that sort of thing of like, oh, okay, I guess I'll just own up to it and all sort of thing.
yeah,
And honestly, if there is some sort of shame to it, I don't know. I don't necessarily see it as all too much shameful. You know what I mean? Like, so obviously, in terms of your username and your background, like, Whyking, that's in relation to the Vikings and that sort of culture. And, like, even if
yes,
they were considered savages and barbarians by at least modern Western standards, well, guess how much the Vikings were able to accomplish, with their
yeah.
seemingly savage ways and all that sort of shit,
Uh,
and
and
go
how
on.
it both encourages drinking and also discouraging. Like it's complicated.
Oh yeah,
so
like
so that
like
that that continues through
oh
even
yeah,
today.
yes, and like that's something like I've talked about, like previously on channel as well. Once again, another link in the description for those who are interested. But the whole nature of like alcohol in of itself, and how you get into a lower vibratory state, what have you, where you just become more so open, receptive, potentially to negative things, what have you. But also, even though I was more so highlighting that there's potential negatives to it because like the spiritual negatives aren't necessarily as addressed or considered in the modern day. It's a tool just like anything else. So if it's used in perpetual, like responsibly, if it's used in perpetual balance in regards to other things, it can also be a catalyst to go ahead and have positive beneficial effects as well.
Yeah.
Whether it be just to Hygge in of itself or anything else really. um, but once again, I guess the one thing to go ahead and put on here is drink responsibly, everybody. Drink responsibly.
Yeah, definitely. I need to
But yeah,
pull
but I guess that's a good segue to go ahead and close things out. So, once again, do you have any final thoughts, Whyking?
No,
Go ahead and share.
those are my final thoughts. Yeah, that'll be all.
All right. So yes, with that, this has been Twisted and Whyking.
Oh,
I
sorry.
was hoping you would
Yeah,
go ahead and say, "Oh, no, you're good. You're good." That was more so
I'm
my
no
bad for
Whyking.
not.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh no,
Yeah.
that was my bad for not priming you. But oh well, this is a little bit of a messy sort of thing in of itself. But oh well, that works. But yes, so this has been Twisted and Whyking and all of
Yeah.
that with the
Thanks
open
for having me.
sorcery. Yes, now it's time for Whyking to go ahead and clean up his mess of beer cans, what have you,
Yeah,
that have contributed to a state of comfort and mindfulness and being Hig and all that. So yes,
all that.
to everyone out there listening, stay frosty, Neguses. Peace.